calling all you women who are go-getters, ladies who do all the things and seem to have it all together. Business leaders, mothers, volunteers, and household managers who get things done. You ladies give everything to everyone every day. You're 100% committed, you're loyal, and you're driven. But you're also exhausted, stressed out, overwhelmed, and just generally feel like crap. Let me introduce you to Self-Care for Female Leaders. This program specializes in helping you female leaders prioritize self-care without sacrifice. Your coach will help you streamline your schedule, get clear on your goals and priorities, and help you learn to fuel your body for the lifestyle you want to live. This program makes time for you easy to find. It eliminates stress, it increases your energy, and helps you finally feel like the badass you are. So if you're ready to ditch the stress and start feeling more like yourself again, click the link to schedule a discovery call today. Hey, we are back with another fantastic episode of HomeBod Podcast. And today our guest is Emma Faye. I am super excited to hear from her. She is an audiobook narrator and actor with a passion for bringing stories to life. She specializes in young adults, sweet romance, fantasy, and anything clean, which we will hear more about that. She has high standards when it comes to the content of her books and shows. She has over 20 years of acting experience to bring to the table and can deep dive into the characters she portrays. She puts her heart into every project, and it comes across whether you're listening to her audiobooks or watching her on the stage or screen. Emma also runs a local community theater, moderates a support group for women going through betrayal trauma, and is a proud cat mom of 4 kitties. I love it. So welcome, Emma. We are very excited to hear from you. I'm fascinated by this because I only pretty much do audiobooks. I don't actually read books. And it's not because I can't read or I don't like to read. It's because
who has time?
Right. Like who actually can sit down and read a book? I'd like to meet that person because I can't. And my daughter is super into audiobooks, and she's found this this woman who does meditation / stories on YouTube. And she takes on the character voices. And so I'm like, oh man, that's a cool thing. It's
super fun.
Not anywhere near my wheelhouse. It's
oh man, see, and Emma's doing that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a voice actor. I wanted to do all that kind of stuff. So I would like so practice all my imitations and all that. Anyway, it was so fun.
You still could.
I could, but I'll be on stage doing other things rather than acting.
Yeah,
but
it does take a lot of time.
Yeah. No, is there anything else that you want us to know about you? Anything that just speaks to the microphone?
That's pretty good intro. The other thing that I am working on right now is starting a company of an audiobook production company outside of just myself to produce clean books, clean audiobooks. I've just seen a gap in the industry. There's a lot of audiobooks out there, but not all of them are clean, which is what I prefer to read, clean reads. And so I'm working on that. It's called Cat's Meow Productions, and that it's a clean audiobook production company. So it's from casting to producing to distributing, all of the above. So because there's a lot of clean books out there and I can't do them all and I want them out.
So
for those of us that want to read those, I mean, it would be nice to be able to go to one particular place and say, hey, I know that anything that I download from this particular website is all going to be, they're all going to be clean. I don't have to worry about my kids. It's
exactly
pre-edited for me.
Yay! Yes. And that's the goal. And everybody has a different definition of what clean is to them. And so what I'm trying to do with Cat's Meow is kind of have a rubric of, a variation. Like it can be super clean, it's like middle grade and there's like absolutely nothing, up to, this is more teenager or adult, or, just kind of whatever you would like for clean, whether it's like absolutely no swearing whatsoever, or maybe a couple of swear words, but there's still a cap that's not going to go too far, or just kissing versus they might have sex, but it's not explicit. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole range.
Yeah. That was going to be my question is what, that's a big question. What makes it clean? What
Yes.
makes it, but also
And everybody's different.
that's a thing too. Like my kids started getting into a book series. Well, my son had already read it. And my daughter started reading it and he was like, Mom. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is a great author. Like he writes adult books, but these are all young adult books. And my son was like, yeah, the last book of the series gets a little dicey. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I don't have time to read my own books, Mitch, with us read theirs. So
right.
They're appropriate.
Exactly. So that's one of my goals. That's to try to have basically a rating system for books. So people like you can go and say, okay, this is like as much content as it's going to have. Like it doesn't go past this threshold. And so, for yourself or for your kids, that
there isn't a rating system, is there?
There's not.
There isn't.
Nope.
That's crazy to me.
And it's just kind of everything goes. I mean, we don't get a rating until, they turn the book into a movie, which nobody wants to see anyway. But it's just, that's one of the reasons why I never read things like 50 Shades of Grey. Like I don't want to read. To me, there's a big line in the sand there. Like I don't want to read that. And, to see the rating of the movie that came out, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
The book was way better than the movie. So
it always is.
If you're going to pick one, read the book.
So why the interest in just clean flicks?
So it's something that's just always been, I've been passionate about. I've been an actress since I was a kid. And I've just always had really high standards. It started with, the religion I grew up in. That's where the standards started. But as I got older, I realized that a lot of the standards from my religion, I really felt that were important to me. Like, no swearing and things like that. And so that is who I am in real life. I don't swear. I don't, I'm not a violent person. I don't know many people who are, but there's things that I don't do.
Regular.
Right. It's fine. I hold up a knife back here. Right. Like, no, but I just don't do these things in real life. I might have sex in real life, but I don't talk about it, explicitly to everybody. So, there's a balance and there's a line that I just don't want to cross. And for me, the biggest thing is just having a clean mind. And you guys talk about, a clean body, clean home. For me, it's a clean mind is just as important as those things. The things that we consume, that we actually either visually or audibly consume, is super important because it stays in your mind. It stays in your brain. Your brain actually has a hard time distinguishing the difference between reality and imagination. And those are just things that I don't want in my head. And I'm a very visual person. And so when I read, I visualize things very clearly. And so I don't want to visualize certain things. And the more we read or consume, whether it's television or books, these things, the more we get desensitized to it as a society. And there's so many things wrong with society. I don't want that to be one in my personal life.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. I'm a huge proponent of paying attention to what you are consuming, whether it's through your mouth, your eyes, your ears. And that's something that I preach to my clients a lot. Not necessarily about whether or not it has swear words, because let's be real, I've never gone a day in my life without cussing.
That's fine.
But as far as, the content, for sure, if you're reading or watching a lot of negative, dark stuff, it does invade your mind. And you're right, your brain doesn't know the difference. That's why you can do affirmations and it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But your brain, and you can visualize, your goals, and it works because your brain really does believe everything. So you have to be careful. And I think for kids especially, it's important to make sure that what they're consuming, not just like the words, but the content,
Yes, absolutely.
I'm glad now there's a push for books that are about, girls doing awesome things,
Yeah.
and there's a
Absolutely.
push for, books that include, I just saw one that was really cool. And it was like had characters that were, non-binary, and then they had character, it had like a character of, and it wasn't weird. It was just, this is just our world we live in. It was like
Yeah.
the newer version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where there's all kinds of
Sure.
different people in
Yeah.
our neighborhood.
Right.
And now we actually talk about those kind of people,
Yes. We
So
don't
I
sweep it
think
under
it's
the
cool
rug.
when
Yeah.
they start, books are powerful. Books are very powerful.
They really
Media
are.
is powerful.
Media is a teacher, and no
Yes.
matter how much we may dislike that, it's the truth. Media teaches us, and
Yes.
any form of media, whether it's television or books, and
Sure.
what are we learning then?
Yeah.
So
So
has
I
that
have
been
to
hard?
imagine, I have to imagine that, as a business owner, anybody who runs a business, they know that, you can't be all things to all people. Even as a mom, like even if you don't run a business, you can't be all things to all people. You can't you can't say yes to everything. And so there have to be lines and boundaries that you draw and say, no, I'm not going to work with that type of person, or I'm not going to do this. But I have to imagine that with a lot of media tending to go more towards the not clean side, at least in my interpretation, by saying that I'm going to stay strictly clean, how much of that is alienating? But versus, so talk about the alienation versus the freedom.
Yeah.
That comes with saying, this is my boundary and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, your question, Heather, as well. Yes, it is hard. It is very limiting. There are a lot of projects that I pass up. I just passed one up yesterday that it just didn't feel right. And she's mostly a clean author, but it didn't fit my brand. And so it does limit the projects that I can do, and it always has my entire life being an actor. I've turned down roles for television and movies as well as audiobooks, and it's not easy, and sometimes it's not fair because I want that role or that movie or that gig. It just looks so fun, but it just doesn't feel right for me. And so it is limiting, but it is also freeing, like you said, because I know at the end of the day that I feel good about whatever I've done. I've always said that regardless of what project I'm in, I want my children to be able to see this or read it or whatever it is. I don't have children, but that's still my philosophy. I want the younger generation to be able to consume whatever media I'm doing, and I feel okay about that. I don't want to be like, oh, you can't watch that until you're 18. That's not something that I want to do with my projects. So at the end of the day, I feel the freedom of knowing that I'm being true to myself, that my authentic self is being honored.
And that is everything, isn't it?
Oh, that's
Yes.
huge.
It's everything.
That's huge. I had to imagine, where I had to really take a good look at what I thought was clean media, clean entertainment. I have 3 kids with neurodiversities, and my oldest is on the autistic spectrum, and her ability or her lack of imagination is a little tough to understand sometimes. And so she would read books or she would watch movies, and she had a really difficult time differentiating between fiction and fantasy. And I know lots of little kids, that's a real thing for them, but for her, it was augmented just incredibly. And then with my other 2, being ADHD and just with the sensory inputs that are going on with all the books and the media and the way that they speak to each other, I'm a huge advocate of using a correct tone of voice for the setting in which you are speaking. But we would get these cartoons going on. Just innocent little cartoons. You get Looney Tunes. I didn't
Not
think
so
anything
innocent.
of it. Did not think anything of it until they're beating each other up in the living room, standing on the couch, yelling, "Shut up!" to each other. And I'm going, what are you doing?
Not okay.
but they were just reenacting Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Looney Tunes is freaking violent.
Right?
So violent. It is so funny.
And I just thought, I would never have acted that way growing up. I didn't think anything of it. It was Looney Tunes. It was a cartoon.
Right,
But then I see it in the hands of my children who have no ability to differentiate
right
and wrong and fact and fiction. And they're behaving like this. And I'm going, whoa, I have got to put way more filters on what's going on here. So I applaud people like you who are willing to say no, who are willing to draw that line in the sand and say, this is what it is. So tell me a little bit about the mindset that you have to have going into it to stay strong, to say, you know what, I really want that role. It looks like so much fun, but I really am going to stay my ground. I'm not going to fluctuate on this no matter what. Tell me about your thought process.
It's so right now I'm mostly focusing on audiobooks. Obviously with COVID, my theater is not doing anything right now. And so my life is audiobooks at the moment. And so when I'm auditioning or when I'm looking at an author, the first thing I do is I go to the book. And sometimes on Amazon you can preview, like they'll have the whole book and you can type in keywords. And so I'll type in keywords, whether it's swear words or other illusion that might pop up. Sometimes it's hard because you don't know exactly what they're going to say. But I just do a quick look. And if it has some of my like hardcore boundaries, like I won't say the F word. That's just not a word I'm going to say. I never use it in real life. It's just not something that I'm going to do. And so that for me, that's just a hard line right there. If it has it in there, I just exit out and I don't even think about the project anymore. But there's sometimes that I don't know. I can't see the preview, or you have no idea what the content is. And so anytime I do audition, I always have the caveat in my message, like, hey, I'm excited. I'm really interested in this project. However, I only read clean, and I give a very brief definition of, i.e. excessive swearing or explicit sex scenes. And then at that point, that's a pretty clear line for most authors to be like, oh, that's not my book. Or they'll ask more details and give me a little more insight of exactly what would be in the book. And then I make my decision based off that. There are some books that I've done that have had a little more swearing than others, a little more that I'm super comfortable with. But for me, it's a matter of taking it to my higher power and saying, am I good to do this? I really want this project. Can I do it? Like, basically, do I have a blessing to do this? Is my process. And sometimes the answer is no, and it's super hard. And I hate saying no because I want these projects. But yeah, so it's just a matter of research and then asking my higher power, who to me is my God. So
that's awesome. I think having something to check in with is everything. I mean, whether I listen to a lot of spiritual stuff, mindset stuff. And so they always say, whatever you call it, whether it's the universe or whatever, but I think we all need that guiding force in our life. And I've found that those who haven't found theirs or don't think they need one, they tend to be the ones who are wandering around in the dark the most.
Yeah.
I think to be able to have something to check in with, it can even just be your own gut, but to be able to check in and go, does this feel, I love what you said when you're like, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. I think we as women, we ignore that. We've been trained to ignore that. And my husband said something the other day. We were talking about our kids and an extended family member who we don't want them around. And we knew for a long time, but we just found out we definitely don't want our kids around this person now. And my husband said, whenever kids don't feel comfortable around someone or they don't want to be around someone, you always listen. You always listen because they do know their gut and they listen to their guts. And I think somewhere, especially as girls, we get told, through those adolescent years, well, you got to suck it up and you have to hug that person because they're your cousin or they're your
Right.
whatever, and you have to be around them and you have to smile and you have to be polite, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable around this person, and so then that trickles down to the rest of our lives, and we end up, in a work situation that doesn't feel right.
Yes. Yeah.
And we feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be polite. I'm supposed to smile. I'm supposed to do this. And I'm not
Right.
supposed to listen to that feeling. So I applaud you for listening to that and sticking to it. It's something that more of us need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, boundaries are huge.
Boundaries
Boundaries
are
are like one of
huge.
my favorite things in life. They're amazing.
As
And
she
yeah.
says, standing in a box. She likes boundaries.
So I was reading actually, I was listening to a book the other day, The Atomic Habits, and he was talking about how, the atomic habit is a little thing. And if we can just do a 1% increase every day, then eventually it turns into a habit. It's not a huge life-changing thing,
Mhm.
but if we were to make a 1% increase every day for a year, that's like a 37% increase by the end of the year. He said, conversely, if we make 1% leeway to the negative, then it has that
Yeah.
same effect, but to the negative side of things. And so I view what you do is that 1% step in the right direction rather than the 1% step in the wrong direction.
Right.
Of just maintaining this healthy mind, this healthy head of where does our brain sit? Our brain is so much more powerful than I think
Mm.
what any of us ever give it credit for.
Yes.
And Heather, going back to your point of, that's why visualization works in sports, in ski racing, in whatever it is, visualization or, manifestation, that kind of stuff works because our brain is so powerful. So where is our brain sitting? Is our brain a happy brain? Is our brain a healthy brain?
Yeah.
And what are all the things that we do to make it healthy? I've even gone so far as to say, I really have tried a very conscious choice to positively reinforce my directions to my kids. So instead of saying, don't chew with your mouth open, it's please close your mouth when you chew.
Mhm.
Don't sit on that chair, or please find another chair to sit in. So I've tried so hard to use positive language so that they hear positive words that I just can't even imagine filling my kids' heads or even my head with all the negativity that can have that domino effect into other things and other places.
And it's been so interesting. I'm an avid reader myself, even before I got into audiobooks. And my favorite is YA, is young adult, like the teenage books. Like they're super fun. They're like my guilty pleasure. Like I don't have to pay attention like super hard to it. And they're just fun stories, but it's just amazing and really saddening how much explicit content gets into these young adult books. And these kids are like 16, and it's like, is this really what we want to be teaching our 16-year-olds, whether it's language or violence or drugs or sex? Like it's like this isn't what I want for the youth in this day.
No.
And it's not even that. My daughter's 11, and she was reading one of the really popular kid books right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she can read 220 words per minute. I am not going to read what she reads.
Right.
Not going to happen. So she's telling me, this is all about dragons, and this dragon and that dragon. And when they choose a new queen, they have to battle to the death. And it was a battle between the mom and the daughter won and killed her mom. And then this dragon over here got put under some spell, and he ended up like disemboweling his father unknowingly. Like, what are you reading?
Sounds awful.
But it was popular, and it's what all of her friends were reading. And it's just so hard to say, you know what?
Yes.
We have to be done with these books.
Yeah.
And it's better to just not even start them in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what Heather was saying about, the messaging that we're giving, like even just with, I feel uncomfortable, like the kids have that gut, they know it. But the more they're inundated with this unclean material, no matter what it is, that gut goes away. Like, I think that's one reason as adults, we don't listen to our gut as much, is because we are so inundated and we're more desensitized to the various things in life. And like, let's let them keep that as long as possible. and learn how to develop it. So as an adult, they can still listen to it.
Emma, I'm going to need you to make me a list of books.
It's your rating system.
Now I'm all stressed out about it. I'm like, what are my kids reading up there? You know, I'm like all proud of them because they're knocking out these series. And my kids are such good readers. I'm like, they're probably reading about dragons disemboweling one another, slaughtering their parents. Like, this is not good.
Right. Well, and I mean, like everybody's different. We all have different thresholds, and as a kid, I remember reading, well, like Goosebumps was like my favorite thing as a kid.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, oh, those are actually kind of creepy at times, and it's like, huh. Right. And so it's just an interesting thing to think back as a kid. Like, it didn't affect me that way. I mean, as an adult, I see how silly they are. But, there's that balance of like, okay, where is that line for you? And where is that line for each kid? And I think it's a good conversation to have with your children, because every child is going to be different of what they're okay with and what they enjoy and what makes them feel uncomfortable while they're reading. Because kids, like you said, they know it. They know what they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with me, like, it's easy enough to skip over scenes that make me uncomfortable, but why pick up the book in the first place?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so I think that's why that's the good part about a rating system.
Mm-hmm.
For movies, for me, I would rather watch a war movie. I'm much more comfortable with a war movie than I am, so that would be rated R, but I would rather watch that than a PG-13 that has all the sexual innuendos and the language and like, there are certain things that I'm more comfortable with. And so I think you're right. Having that conversation with your kids to say, where are we the most comfortable? What are you okay feeling like? What are the family boundaries that we would, want to maintain to keep peace in the home? I mean, it's one thing to have a healthy mind, but that spills over into our behaviors, our actions, the language that we use with each other. And you can make or break the peace in the home too.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you said, context matters too. And that's a good conversation to have with kids as well. Is like, if it is a war book, like, talk about that. Like, this might make you feel uncomfortable, but let's talk about why it makes you feel uncomfortable and why this one may be important to read, whereas disemboweling dragons might not be as important to read.
Well, I was thinking, this just made me think I don't recall what it was we watched, but my husband and I watched something together and I was still thinking about it like 2 days later. Yeah. And I was like, man, like, if I'm going to put something in my brain that I'm going to be thinking about 2 days later, it had better be beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think we often, we zone out in the world of Netflix and whatever, and we just start watching whatever is on.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, I mean, I never got on the whole Tiger King thing because I can't consume trash, whether it's in my mouth or in my eyes.
Yeah.
But, when you just kind of wonder what effects that kind of stuff has on the collective subconscious.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I'm all for watching something, stupid and mindless, and that's fine. There's a time and a place for that as well. But, the other day when I was like, I am still thinking about that show, and it has been like 2 days, like, holy cow. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. So
that's why I love VidAngel is one of my favorite companies. I love what they're trying to do, and it's so frustrating the lawsuits that they're under for it.
Are they the ones that make the clean version of a popular?
Yeah. And it's just, and they don't believe in censoring, which, I don't necessarily either, but they believe that you should have the power to watch what you want to watch in your own home. And filter the things in your own home. And so, like, it's been great. We've been rewatching a show from the early 2000s. It's fairly clean. It's Monk. I don't know if you guys ever watched that. Like, it's pretty clean. Yeah. Technically, it's a crime show, so people die, but it's comedy and it's fun and it's mostly lighthearted. But we've been watching it through VidAngel, and it's just insane to see how many things they filter out. And it's like, and even with me, someone who really tries to consume clean things for the most part, like, I've become very desensitized to a lot of things. And just every time we see an episode and how many filters and what they're filtering out, it's like, I didn't even notice those things. And it's sad that we get to that point where it doesn't mean anything anymore, because I feel like it damages the spirit.
Well, so I mean, even going back to the first time I ever remember a controversy when it came to film,
Mm.
let's go back to Titanic.
Yeah.
I mean, Titanic was one of those things that my little brother loved. The Titanic,
Yes.
studying about it. And so when my boys got old enough, I kind of just got them into studying the Titanic. And, um, whereas my brother knew the Titanic pre-movie,
Mhm.
and then he went and saw the movie and we were going, halfway through, and all the controversy that came of that and the clean,
Yes.
edits of that,
Yeah.
versus my boys who I introduced them to the Titanic post the movie,
Mhm.
and they've just barely learned that there is a movie, that mom, we need to watch the
Yep.
movie. And I'm like, look, we can get the documentaries, but we're not going to watch the movie.
Yes.
And they just don't understand why.
Yeah.
It just makes me appreciate all the more the ability to say, these are our limits within our house. This is what we, I would rather watch the movie about the documentary version. And yeah, people died. Lots of people died in a horrible way. But like you said, context is everything. We're not going to go watch the historical fictional movie that has the nudity and everything else in it too.
Exactly.
Like, we just don't need that in order to understand what happened with the Titanic.
It's so funny because I have a totally different take on that. I loved that because she was so confident in her own skin.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I thought it was a very
Awesome.
empowering scene and an empowering situation for especially for a character who was set in the situation she was set in, where she was basically owned by her fiance, owned by her mother, had to follow all these strict rules, had to behave a certain way, had to, go and pay her fiance a visit because she was supposed to in the evening, as opposed to being empowered to do and feel as she wanted.
Yeah.
See, an awesome, perfect example of how families can be different.
Yeah.
And there again, how the rating system can come in super beneficial.
Yeah.
To be able to say, here's the spectrum of what I would consider, clean, what I'm willing to do. And to be able to say, one person thinks of this as just pure nudity. Why would you watch that? Whereas the other person views this as liberating and freedom, and let's dig into this whole idea and concept a little bit more. Perfect example.
I think it's I think it's also just it's just an indicator of you need to have conversations, right? Like you were talking about, have a conversation with your kids about what they feel about this book. If you're going to watch a movie like that with someone that you like, your kid or whoever, have a conversation. There's a scene coming up, here's what's going to happen, here's what I feel about it. After we watch it, I want you to share your feelings,
I think that's so powerful.
If you don't, I think the biggest thing, especially in the Utah culture and a lot of like conservative areas, is to not talk about it. We just don't talk about it. You just don't talk about it. You pretend like you didn't see it. And unfortunately, it creates this shame and guilt and all that's associated with that just it takes you down. It spirals you down. Whereas if you can open up, I mean, we've been trying to really do that because we have a teenager and a tween, and so they are at that point now where we have to start having those conversations. And we've been doing our very best to make sure that the door is open, there is no judgment. Let's discuss these things, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about how you feel when you see these images. Let's talk about how you feel when you hear someone say something, or, one of your friends shows you whatever, and it's been great because we've been able to build that trust. And keep the door open. And there have been some very challenging moments where I had to channel the best poker face I could ever imagine. And I don't have a poker face. But when your child is like, so this is what happened, if you're like, oh my God, and you like lose your mind, never are going to talk to you again, right? So
nope, they're not.
Okay, breathe, count to 10.
We talk in support group all the time. You respond, don't react.
Yeah. I'm like, don't react. Just keep a neutral face. Okay, breathe.
Good for you. That's amazing,
I
though.
want to dig into a little bit into another corner of what you do as it relates to having a happy mind through clean words and clean entertainment. You work with women and girls, or just girls with
women,
traumatic events?
So mostly the specific support group. There we go. I have a lisp sometimes. The specific support group that I volunteer in is women who have been betrayed by their husbands through infidelity, whether that's pornography or an actual affair. And so that's the group I specific run.
So tie in the clean reads with some of the things that you see with these women who have been
that's
who
actually
have gone
one
through
of
betrayal.
The biggest motivations for me. It's so and again, everybody has their own definition of clean and their own thresholds, and that's fine. But to me, porn and written word is still porn. And there is a huge in the industry of porn, they go after women through the written word. They go after men through images. And so it's super important to me to have both clean images and clean words for those reasons, because I've seen firsthand what the evils that pornography can do to a person and a family, and the trajectory it leads down if it's not caught soon enough. So Heather, I applaud you for having those conversations with your kids. That is hard, but it is so important.
So hard, but
so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so needed. And you're right, we do sweep things under the rug in this culture, and just as society too. And we need to face these things head on. And so, in these support groups, like it's very much, it goes hand in hand with it for me. It's all about embracing your true self, is so you can recover from the betrayal, but then as well as safeguarding your home and your mind and your children, and perhaps helping your husband safeguard himself as well if he chooses to accept that help with clean media. So it's very interconnected. And like for me with my brand, like it's very clear what my brand is. You go to my website, it's clean reads. Like there's no question about what I do. And so I am planted firm in the sand right there. Like that is me. And I feel like we all need to plant ourselves with our boundaries and say, this is what I will accept. I will not accept anything other than this. And that's something we talk about in support group all the time, is a lot of these women don't know of the infidelity that was going on. And so when they find out, they're devastated. But at that same time, they're able then to plant their flag of say, this is not acceptable. I will not accept this in my home or in my relationship. So to me, it's totally all interrelated, and it's just super important to know yourself and to know where your boundaries lie.
Man, yeah, that's a heavy load.
That's a heavy one.
An important one. Yes. It's so important. And I have had, I always joke that my clients tell me they're getting divorced like at the worst possible time. Like I have had multiple clients tell me, and they just, like I had one mid push-up one time. She was like, yeah, she's doing push-ups, and she's like, yeah, I'm getting divorced. And it was because he cheated. And there were some very colorful words that came along with that.
Sure.
But, and I was like, what? Like, you just drop that right there on the floor. But I think you get to a point where you start to feel that empowerment, and maybe it's because you're doing a push-up and you're like, I'm feeling strong right now.
Right? Yeah. You're releasing that. Yeah. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to me. And I love hate, because I hate to see them go through it, but I love watching that switch.
Yep.
Yes.
That switch it's beautiful. Flips, and they go, no.
Yep.
No more. I'm done. I'm like, I want to cheer and cry because it's like a happy dad.
Yep.
But I'm like, yes, Yes.
Yes, it's so amazing.
It's
And even
amazing.
if they choose to stay, they have their line now. That
Yes.
line is drawn and they will
Right.
not accept anything less. And
Right.
it's amazing.
Yeah. And if they do choose to stay and they work through it, they're generally even stronger for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I don't
It's
care which
beautiful.
way you go, as long
Yeah.
as you keep doing you.
Yeah.
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 No, I
100%.
have a really good friend who her husband was addicted to porn and ended up cheating on her. And she
Mhm.
drew the line in the sand and said, absolutely not. This is not okay. And they ended up pulling through and saving their marriage and being the stronger for it, simply because
happen.
she stood up and said,
Yes.
I'm
not taking it.
not taking it at
Yeah.
all. And now, they ended up having another baby. I mean, everything.
No,
It was
it's
just
beautiful.
amazing to watch the strength that came from saying no.
Yes.
And to be able to move on. And I love how this conversation has gone, because a lot of times Heather and I work from the outside in, saying, we want physical order, in our bodies and in our homes, and that has repercussions on the mind.
Yeah.
But I love how this conversation has gone the opposite. How when we start with the mind and we have order in our mind and boundaries and a good, proper mindset and all the positive things and all the clean reads and all the good media, then that can actually have a ripple effect on our physical life and being able to stand up for, who we are as women or youth, or, what we're going to actually bring into our homes and things like that. I love seeing that it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't
really
matter
cool.
where you start. You can start with your mind and have it ripple effect, or you can start with your physical space and have it ripple effect. And it doesn't matter which one you do first.
Yeah.
Just start somewhere.
Yes.
And do it.
Amen.
Right?
I love that.
Pick a spot. Yep.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
And it's a trickle effect. Like, it trickles to everything, like, because you want it at that
Yes.
point. You feel that relief and that freedom, whichever aspect you start with first. And you're like, I want to apply this to the rest of my life. How do I apply it in everywhere? So yeah, I love that.
Excellent.
Emma,
Well, Emma, if people want to get a hold of you, either to have you narrate their book or interested in the rating system when that comes out, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find you?
So my website is emmafaye-actor.com. And my production company is catsmeowproductions.com.
I love that.
Obsessed with my cats.
I love it.
I'm a cat person myself, so I can't
good.
on that one.
I am not.
That's okay.
She has like the biggest dog in the world.
Oh,
I do.
fun. I do love dogs. I love all animals, but cats are my thing.
So funny.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this
Thank you.
conversation.
This was
It has
great.
been enlightening, empowering, all of those amazing things. And we'll
Thank
make
you.
sure that
It's
we
very
link you
enjoyable.
up to our audience. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Okay, now, very last question. We always save this for the end.
Okay.
And we never tell you that it's coming because we want an honest response.
Okay.
So we like to present happy hacks. So one thing that our audience could do right now to make their mind, their head, their heart, mind, or health a little bit happier today. If you could share one thing as to get there, what would you say?
This is something I share in my support groups a lot. I was told it by a therapist, and it was when I was going through some trauma myself. It was find one thing every day that brings you joy. You don't have to constantly live in joy, but if you can find one thing every day that brings you joy into your life, you'll be better for it.
I like that.
So, and often when I was going through trauma, it was my cats.
Right?
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And we will look forward to seeing what kind of awesome productions and books you bring to the world.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.